Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here with us today. So, we are taking on something that, let's be honest, usually makes people's eyes completely glaze over. We're talking about massive municipal financial ledgers. But don't worry, we are going to translate them together. We'll be looking really closely at the budget documents from places like the Municipality of Barrington and the Municipality of Shelburne. And look, I know exactly what you might be thinking. Spreadsheets, really? Do I need to grab another cup of coffee for this? But stick with me, because by the time we finish this explainer, you aren't just going to see rows of block and red numbers. You're going to see the actual story of community building. We're talking about the invisible scaffolding that keeps your streets lit, your water clean, and your town thriving. Okay, let's dive right in by anchoring all these raw data points into actual human stakes. In his opening message for the 2026-2027 budget, Warden Sean Hatfield hit the nail on the head. He said, "This budget is about more than just numbers. It reflects what matters most to our community and our commitment to keeping our municipality strong, resilient, and a great place to live." He talks about investing in what they call an ocean of opportunity. So really, every single dollar we track today is like a tiny brick in that community foundation. So here's our roadmap for today. First, the community blueprint. Second, where money comes from. Third, funding daily essential services. Fourth, protecting the community. And finally, planning for the future. Let's start with Section 1, the community blueprint, laying the groundwork. Before we can even look at the exact dollars, we really have to understand the architecture here. You see, a municipality essentially splits its financial personality right down the middle. First, you have the operating budget. This is your day-to-day stuff. It's what pays the library janitor, puts gas in the snowplows, and literally keeps the lights on. Now, the major pro here is immediate, highly visible service delivery. But the con, well, it consumes cash really fast without necessarily building new, long-term value for the town. And that is exactly why the capital investment plan acts as the visionary side of the coin. This is all about making smart investments that will benefit the community years down the road, specifically looking at a rolling 5-year window for big infrastructure projects. It's basically trying to balance the absolute best of our short-term needs with long-term growth. I just want you to pause for a second and really let this number sink in. $15,382,088. That is the total expected expenditures for the Municipality of Barrington for the 2026-2027 fiscal year. I mean, the scale of operations here is just massive. Running a modern community is literally a multi-million-dollar enterprise, and every single cent of that needs to be accounted for, raised, and spent responsibly. Moving on to Section 2. Where money comes from, pooling community resources. Because, obviously, before you can spend $15 million, you have to raise $15 million. So let's open up the revenue side of the ledger. Look at that top line. Property taxes at over $8.2 million. That is the reliable engine keeping the municipality running. Now, the undeniable pro here is incredible financial stability for the town. But the con? It really brings up the question of fairness. The vast majority of the community's financial weight is being shouldered pretty heavily by residential property owners, especially when you compare it to diverse business taxes, which sit way lower at just about $360,000. When you slice up the financial pie, you can see exactly how reliant the town is on property taxes compared to literally everything else. That second biggest slice there, conditional and other transfers at roughly $3.5 million, well, that represents money coming in from other levels of government like provincial and federal or internal reserve transfers. But the lion's share, yeah, that is pure local community investment. Okay, let's humanize those massive multi-million-dollar numbers for a quick second. In Barrington, a 1.5% operating budget equivalent translates to roughly $16.50 a year for a homeowner with $100,000 assessed home value. Now, for the upcoming year, the baseline property tax rates are actually holding steady, which is great news. However, there is a small, carefully measured increase in sewer rates to cover the rising costs of running and maintaining that specific system. And this really represents what we call a user pay model. Many people actually argue this is the fairest system possible because it ensures that only the folks who actually utilize that specific infrastructure are the ones bearing the brunt of its rising maintenance costs. All right, Section 3, funding daily essential services, where your money goes. So we've pulled the resources together. Now, where exactly does all that money actually go? We're comparing three major spending categories in Barrington for 2026-2027. Look at education leading the pack there at nearly $1.87 million. Right behind it is recreation and culture at $1.63 million, and then general administration, which is the actual machinery of running the local government, costs about $1.12 million. I love looking at this because it instantly communicates what the community values. A massive chunk of those pooled resources goes directly back into the youth, the schools, and the cultural life that makes the town an amazing place to live. Let's zoom in even closer. If we look at the municipality of Shelburne's operating budget, we can actually see the incredibly granular line items that make up these broad categories. For example, over $350,000 goes just to shared services for garbage and regional waste management with Queens. The major pro of this shared model? Massive cost efficiency for taxpayers. But the con is that it means relinquishing a bit of independent control over that service. The budget also dictates facility operations, literally right down to the $9,520 allocated for janitorial wages at the McKay Memorial Library or the $5,000 for Guildhall programming. It's also making sure the town has the right expertise, like retaining a senior planner for about $74,000 to manage future economic development. I wanted to put this raw ledger out there just briefly so you can truly appreciate the staggering complexity of it all. This is literally just one tiny fraction of the Shelburne operating budget. Every single line, from composting bins to coastal community programs to Christmas decorations to line maintenance, all of it has to be anticipated, debated, and funded. There are dozens and dozens of moving parts required just to maintain the status quo, let alone actually grow the economy. Now, when you start reading these documents yourself, you're probably going to run into some pretty intimidating financial jargon. So let's demystify that so you can confidently read your own local budget without needing an accounting degree. When you see a line item for debenture, principal, and interest, all that means in plain English is paying down municipal debt. It's exactly like paying the mortgage on a large town project. And when you see conditional transfers, that just means specific grants coming from the federal or provincial governments that have strings attached. The money just has to be used for a specific condition or project, like a safe restart grant or civic addressing. See, it's not nearly as complicated as it sounds. Which brings us to Section 4, Protecting the Community, Safety and Infrastructure. We are going to shift our focus now to the highest funded category of pretty much any budget, keeping citizens safe. Protective services is kind of an umbrella term, but in the actual ledger, it breaks down into very precise units that operate around the clock to ensure community safety. Let's pull out the specific costs from that ledger. Police protection alone commands $1.42 million annually. Fire protection is right behind it at just over $1 million. But, protection isn't just about first responders. It also includes preventative measures, things like building inspection services at roughly $268,000 to make sure new construction is safe, and the emergency management office at over $109,000 so the town is completely ready when severe weather or a crisis hits. And yes, while these are massive price tags, the absolute best aspect of this spending is its preventative nature. It's all about stopping crises before they happen and bankrupt the community. You add those and a few smaller protective services together, and you get $2.9 million. I really want to emphasize this total because it completely underscores the immense financial commitment required. Almost $3 million of the $15 million budget is entirely dedicated to maintaining law enforcement, fire response, and emergency readiness. It is, quite literally, the cost of peace of mind. And our final section, Section 5, Planning for the Future, Beyond the Current Year. A municipal budget is not just some historical ledger of what things cost last year. It is actively functioning as a forward-looking strategic map. This quote from the budget's introductory message perfectly captures the ultimate challenge of financial stewardship. They note, balancing what we spend with what we bring in is always a challenge. This means maintaining what we have today while also planning for the future. It is an incredibly difficult tightrope to walk because the absolute worst-case scenario is neglecting today's potholes, right? But failing to save for a wastewater plant upgrade 5 years down the road, that's a recipe for a massive future financial crisis. And you can see how all of this builds into an actual life cycle. A budget doesn't just magically appear overnight. As the source outlines, work actually starts several months before the new fiscal year even begins. Step 1, staff and council gather information and review all the data. Step 2, they actively consider public input. And guys, this is the crucial moment where you can advocate for fairness and ensure your specific neighborhood's needs are heard. Step 3 is updating that 5-year capital investment plan we talked about, which is actually a strict requirement under the Municipal Government Act to ensure responsible long-term planning. And finally, step 4, council makes the really tough choices, approves the document, and implements the blueprint. So, we've walked through the revenues, the essential services, the protective costs, and the whole planning process. Now I want to turn it over to you with a final thought. How will these investments actually shape your community's future? The next time you see a municipal ledger, I really hope you don't just see confusing jargon and boring numbers. I hope you see the actual value you derive from local expenditures. Stay engaged with these blueprints because ultimately, it's your money and it is your town. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, stay curious, and I'll see you next time.